What's up, New Hope family? Welcome to episode 1 of the show with no name. With me, as always, for the first time, but actually for like the 28th time, is Pastor Leo.
Hello, ¿cómo está everyone?
Hello, Pastor Leo, and hello to all of you. While we technically have had episode -1 and episode 0, this is the first official episode of the show with no name.
The show with no name.
Which, if you have a better idea for a name, please put it in the comments.
Please do. Seriously.
I hope you liked the song at the beginning. I also hope there was a song at the beginning because we haven't recorded that song yet. But we need Michael to record that song. So I'm saying it now so that it happens. I'm speaking it into existence.
You are therefore forced.
Yes, Michael is now required to record our theme song. We're pretty excited about it. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and also hopefully you just heard it. If you're with us, like I feel like you did it. You nailed it. You understood the assignment. You understood my ridiculous breakdown of where to find what podcast. And I'm very glad that you're here. But make sure maybe you share this. Like if you know some other people that have been with us on the Grow podcast while we've been going through the book of Romans, make sure you're like, hey, did you find the show with no name yet? And if not, here's a link.
Yeah.
Like
and then sing them that song.
And then sing them that song. In fact, I would open with the song.
Oh, there we go.
And, yeah. I might say every person you meet this week, you should open with that song. No hello. Just right into the song.
Right. As loud as you can.
Right. Well, now you're being ridiculous, Leo. Everything I said made sense. You took it too far. But yeah, we are excited for the show with no name. People are playing the piano out there. That's an interesting choice. Leo, why don't you vamp for a minute while I send a message and ask people to not play music right now?
No, but welcome to the show with no name. This is where, just like what David said, this is
piano is
this
so
is the,
loud.
This
is
the
perfect
piano
start.
solo.
This is the perfect start for the show with no name. Please continue.
This is where we're gonna continue digging through not just the book of Romans, but the Bible.
Yep.
After the book of Romans, we're going to pick another book that we're going to dig through. Again, just as in-depth as we're doing right now.
That's true.
If you prefer a certain book, why don't you put that in the comments as well?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's start arguing about what book we should do.
Please.
Leo said it in a really nice way. I went right to let's argue about it. So probably go with what Leo said, which I rarely say on a podcast with you.
Please, one thing though is let's stick to the 6 to 6 books.
Sure. Yeah. We're not going to do like Harry Potter or All the Pretty Horses, one of my favorite books. We're probably going to stick with books of the Bible.
The Little Prince is a good book.
The Little Prince? I don't know if I've read The Little Prince.
Is that The Little Prince?
I don't know.
About the prince who lived in a tiny little planet.
Leo has lost it. But I don't know. I don't know the book you're talking about.
Or The Velveteen Rabbit.
Yeah, we could do Everybody Poops. That's a great book.
That is an awesome book.
Yeah, if you've never read that one, that's a good one. If you would, we're probably not going to do a podcast on that one. I hope we don't need to do a podcast on that one, but it is a great children's book.
Right.
I think the piano playing has stopped. Shout out to Olivia. For and responding to my text message promptly, and shout out to whoever was playing the piano. They were killing
awesome.
it. So if it was you, jump in the comments right now. We're not angry. It was beautiful.
You're right.
You should start up again as soon as we're done recording. But yeah, we're gonna continue on, finish up Romans, figure out a new book.
Yep.
And then again, the Grow podcast, make sure that you get over to the Grow podcast as well, because that's going to be a really, really awesome podcast.
Yes.
Going deeper into Pastor Mark's sermons every single week. It's going to be really fun. The first one that should be up by now when this one is up is just kind of like get to know Pastor Mark a little bit. You know,
Yes.
he's never done a podcast before, so it was his first. It was his first
Ever.
time.
As in ever.
As in ever. So we just had a little bit of fun with Pastor Mark. I hope you enjoy that. I think you'll get to know him a little bit better. If you've been watching for a while, you probably are like, I know David enough, so I don't want to get him to know him any better, and I get it. But you'll get to know Pastor Mark a little bit. So make sure you stay subscribed to the Grow Podcast. Continue joining us there. Continue being in the comments there. But that awesome community that we had built over there through the study of Romans, we really want that to continue over here. So
yes, please.
Make sure you're continuing to jump in the chat, to connect with one another, to respond to each other.
Right.
It's been really, really cool. So
before we start, since it is the first episode,
it is.
It'd be great to celebrate.
I love celebrating
With a little bit of fun.
And yeah, you brought some Filipino food. Now, this is episode 1. Is this going to be? Are we going back to every week? Do I get Filipino food every week?
We'll ask Andy about
Okay, yeah, good call.
But yeah.
So Andy made us some flan. Oh my word! It doesn't look terrible.
It doesn't look terrible.
No.
It's that's made of egg yolks and milk, and that's caramelized sugar on top of it.
Feed me.
Are you gonna do?
This is delicious.
I want some more, please.
Please, sir. I want some more. I haven't had any yet, but I'm already pretty confident that I'm going to want more. Oh man, like the whole dish has like a layer of caramel at the bottom.
Right.
Are you going to join me?
I am.
Thank you. Okay, that's good. Now, there's a Filipino restaurant in Williston now.
Yes.
And Joanna and I were there, and we got to be like the test subjects for it's ube, right? That purple thing. They did ube flan. It was ridiculously good. And that's the most recent flan I've had. So I hope it hasn't ruined me for all other flan. Is it flan or flan?
I don't know.
Because I think it's flan, but I've heard people say flan. But that doesn't sound
right.
Flan sounds fancy. Like, I want some flan, please.
It sounds
you have to say it like that.
It's like you got your pinky up.
Oh, 100%. Your pinky is up. All right, let's dive in. Yep, that'll work. All right, you talk about Romans. I'm just going to eat this for the next 20 minutes. I am going to eat this while you do your summary. But
go ahead.
We're going to dive in. This was longer than we normally spout nonsense. The people listening are like, no, it's not. But
that is so true.
We're continuing in Romans 11. This is the second week of Romans 11.
Right.
And then next week we're finishing Romans 11 because it's a big one. There's a lot of verses, a lot of stuff in this one. We didn't want to rush through it and miss anything. So
all right.
Verses were Romans 11, verses 11 through 24. Again, if you haven't read those yet, did you know this? It's really easy to pause a podcast.
Is it?
Yeah, everybody try it right now. Excellent work. I don't know why I paused. There was really no reason for me to pause. I
did too.
I know. We're not professionals. But anyway, pause the podcast, go read those verses, and then come back because it's much better if you've read the verses. You'll know what we're talking about. So Romans 11, verses 11 through 24. Why don't you give us your summary, kind of what we should walk away from these.
All right. So for this one, Paul began, not just for this one, but Paul began his defense of God's faithfulness to his promises in starting at chapter 9. So if you're following the Grow podcast, or if you want to go back and listen to it, started at around episode 120.
Okay.
Again, without all of the rabbit trails that we have been following.
Yeah, you can skip about 5-6 minutes in probably.
Right. But yeah, episode 120, we started talking about Romans chapter 9. But he began his defense of God's faithfulness to his promise there by explaining how a correct understanding of God's promise made sense. So even back then, Paul has been saying context matters.
Sure.
So
I agree.
Really?
Yeah, I want it on the record that I agree with Paul.
Yeah, that is so true. We agree because context really matters.
It does. Yeah.
Considering the present situation of the people of Israel. So here's the thing. So since God had only chosen some from the people of Israel to be his true spiritual people, the small number of Jewish believers in Paul's day, and even today, did not contradict God's word. So Paul returns to that promise, showing what it means for the future of Israel. He argues that the addition of Gentiles into the people of God will ultimately have a very positive effect.
So fair to say, from what Paul's talking about, and the heater just kicked on, which I don't love. So A, you might be hearing the heater, but also
Right.
B, it's directly behind me and just blasting my legs and back with way too much heat.
You should have worn my jacket again.
Yeah, just drenched in sweat. Like, man, we're really diving into Romans today. Look at Lundeen over there. He's really locked in. No, but fair to say, from what Paul, especially considering what we've been talking about recently, there's still hope for Israel, because it's been
Right.
it's been a pretty dark last few episodes for
And
Israel.
we've been talking
from-
about the people of Israel. It's not very good.
No, Paul's been pretty rough on his own people.
Right. But here's the thing. It's not just hope. When we say there's still hope for you, it's like saying, there's still a chance, but you have to do something about it, or something needs to be done, or else you're doomed. Sorry about that. No, but that's not the case. I think it would be more accurate to say Israel still has a future. Not really a hope, but a future. Paul says eventually that they would finally accept. And when Jesus returns, the nation will rise again. And one day they shall be received again. And God will never break his covenant with his people. He promised to restore them, and he will. So Israel still has a future. It's not that they need to do something about it or else they're doomed. Israel still has a future.
That's good.
So, yeah.
I'm glad.
Finally, right? It's like, woo!
Yeah, and Paul's really just kind of like explaining that all of this is part of God's plan. Like, God's going to use all of this that's been happening, part of his plan.
Right.
Taken a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Like, he could have just said, "This is part of God's plan," but he didn't. He took a lot longer to explain it.
I think I understand why.
Oh,
too.
okay.
If you do a quick Google search, what did I say? Search.
A Google search.
Search.
That was your Sean Connery impression. I kind of liked that. That was good. Pastor Leo as Sean Connery breaks down the book of
I
Romans.
didn't even know I had Sean Connery in me.
Now you do. You can break that out on a Sunday morning. You're welcome.
There we go. Expect that on a Sunday morning, PH. Good luck with that. But, all right, so you do a quick search. It takes 21 days to form a habit. So 21 days.
It's pretty good. How many podcasts have you done? 27?
Yeah.
Would you say you have a habit now of recording a podcast with me?
Still
then?
no. I'm hard-headed that way.
Okay, as long as it's not me. I'm glad it's
And
you
for the
and not me.
record, we just skipped one day of recording.
We did.
Yeah.
Did you break the habit?
Yeah, I broke the habit. So
you're completely
see,
thrown off now.
it's off.
If this podcast is bad, just know we were supposed to record it yesterday. And,
Yep.
and that's why it's bad. We would have been great. Yesterday, we would have been really, really interesting.
Right.
Probably kind of funny sometimes and insightful. But today, this is what you get
Yep.
today. But
We broke the habit.
But I hope, if you've been with us for this whole book of Romans, that's been more than 21 episodes. That's more than 21 days.
Yes.
You guys have built up a habit.
That is so true.
A lot of you have been with us like for 120 some episodes.
Yeah.
Of
You guys are
started
awesome.
at the beginning of the Grow podcast.
It's not just a habit.
That's like a.
It's a way of life.
Ooh. That's good. Thank you, Pastor Sean Connery, Leo.
Yeah, that's so. So it takes 21 days to form a habit. It takes longer to change a person's mind or to change a person's way of thinking. Since the advent of AI.
Ooh.
I did. I asked AI how long it takes to change a
ChatGPT?
person's mind. Yep.
Yes.
And then here's the answer. The time it takes to change a person's mind depends on the type of and strength of their beliefs, as well as the quality and quantity of new information they receive.
Ooh, thank you.
It's nice,
Robot.
right? So, I can't do the Siri voice. So.
No, please don't try.
Right.
Please don't try.
So this is why Paul is taking his time to really, really hold their hand and walk them through this. Because I continue. According to a study, AI says most people can create a new mindset. You know how long? 3 months. So it takes 3 months to create a new mindset. However, some may take longer if they have emotional objections. And we know that the people of Israel have objections or are deeply, or they have deeply rooted mindsets.
Yeah.
So in some cases, it can take months or years to change a person's mind. So changing people's minds is not easy. It simply boils down to the person you're trying to educate and their disposition towards critical thinking.
Right. And the Jewish people, even the Jewish Christians, right, that Paul's writing to, like, they've clearly accepted that Jesus is God's son. So that was like a first step. But it doesn't mean that they don't still have a lot of, deep-rooted beliefs like you're talking about, which are going to bring up the emotional objections that you're talking about. We've even talked about that a couple times in the last few weeks, really the whole time I've been going through Romans, about what it must have been like at times to, like, Todd gets up there, classic Roman name. Todd gets up there to read the letter from Paul at the front of the room. And like during some of these moments, you're like, I am not comfortable in this room as one of the Jewish Christians, because he's just coming at me. And now he's talking about my transgressions. Like, that would probably bring up some more emotion. Like, what? Excuse me, Paul. You're supposed to be like helping me out here,
right?
And you're really attacked. They would feel attacked.
Yeah, that is so true. So Paul was not really very shy.
No,
no, he's not
at all.
Yeah. So about talking to the Jews about how again and again he preached the gospel in a synagogue, and then he was met with lukewarm responses at best, and even being beaten and stoned at worst. And of course we know that it was not just him. Right. So and then he'd go to another synagogue and he'd be met with similar results. And then Paul and his companions turned to the Gentiles, who generally welcomed their message. And I think for the people of PH, they will see a similar pattern here, especially since we talked about that recently. But this was not an accident. The Jewish people's rejection and the Gentiles' acceptance was God's plan for the salvation of the world. So it was part of the plan all along.
Right. And so then, so we've got Todd reading the letter.
Right.
We'll go with like Malachi. Is the Jewish Christian, right? And he's uncomfortable. And then you got like Cassius over there, who's like, this is great. Like, he's really getting the Jewish Christians, and I'm a Gentile, and I'm killing it.
Jewish Christians.
And then verse 13 shows up.
Right.
And Todd up front goes, I am talking to you Gentiles. And you're like, okay, oh boy. Or actually, you might have been thinking the opposite. You're like, here comes all the praise for me as the Gentile, because we accepted him. We're the greatest. And it doesn't... it doesn't all stay great for them either.
That is so
First
true.
of all, why is Paul so feisty? Like, Paul needs a hug. During this part of this letter, Paul just needs a hug.
He's had a rough day.
All of the bad things that have ever happened to Paul are coming out right here in chapter 11. All the stonings, all the hatred, the imprisonments. He's like, I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna let him know how I feel. But yeah, now he goes after to the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Does he like anybody? Does Paul like anyone? Is my question, Pastor Leo.
Likes Timothy.
Yeah, okay, fair point.
Okay, so Paul's message to the Gentile Christians in the church at Rome was like, you guys have no business boasting over your fellow Jewish Christians.
Which again, that's probably like Cassius was all ready to like rub it in Malachi's face, if you guys are following along with the random names that I gave to people.
And they're now going to be like, okay, I'm so sorry. All right, so I can just imagine some of the Gentile Christians misquoting and misrepresenting Paul. I mean, when did that not happen? Right.
We still do it now. So they probably were doing it back then.
So they were puffing their chests out, thumbing their noses at their Jewish Christian brothers, saying that God has turned his back on Israel, shows you guys, right? So remember, Paul has not been to the church at Rome yet at this time. So the way I see it, this is Paul's way of reminding them that he is not unconcerned about his own people. It's not that he hates them or he doesn't love them. That's why he's saying all of these things. He's not unconcerned about his own people. His purpose in bringing the gospel to the Gentiles is to arouse in the people of Israel that envy. We talked about that jealousness or that jealousy before. And so the aim is to save some of them. So that's why.
Yeah, well, he gets a little more into that later, and we'll talk about that next episode, more of that jealousy. So if you're like, wait, what? We'll even dive deeper into it.
Oh yeah,
in episode 2 of the show with no name. But I want to talk about verse 16 because it's weird. And I remember in college asking the Romans professor at our college, because I didn't know the original. I didn't know Greek or whatever. And I was like, did they mistranslate this? Because he starts talking we're going to use a bread analogy here.
Yes,
we're talking about dough.
And
should
then have brought bread
with it. You should have. Yeah. How dare you? Next time you can bring bread. I'm actually okay with the flan though. It's delicious. So I'm like, all right, bread analogy. I can get on board with that. We're talking about bread, and then out of nowhere, we're talking about a tree. And I'm like, what happened to the bread? We never resolved the bread issue. And I legitimately said, is the dough part a mistranslation? Because I don't understand why we started talking about dough, and then we just roll into talking about branches on an olive tree, and I don't get it. So I'm gonna need you to break this one down for me.
Okay. So there are 2 different ideas on this one, as you mentioned. The lump of dough
I have more than 2, but none of them are intelligent. So,
but the lump of dough reference is from Numbers chapter 15, verse 17 to 21. If you want to go back and read it, pause and do that.
That was a good pause, Leo.
Yeah, that was a good pause, right? So pause that one and read it. But here's the thing. God's instruction to Moses was the first part of the dough was to be offered up to God as a symbol. Take that, note that as a symbol that the entire lump belonged to him. So the lump of dough is a symbol, but the entire dough belongs to him. The same idea can be seen in Leviticus chapter 23, verses 9 to 14. So Leviticus 23, verses 9 to 14 during the Feast of First Fruits. So here's the basic idea. When God accepts the part, he sanctifies the whole. When God accepts the part, he sanctifies the whole. Applying this to the history of Israel, God accepted the founder of the nation, Father Abraham, who had a lot of children.
There's a song about that.
Oh, really?
Would you like to sing it for us?
No.
With the motions?
Oh, I want the minor key.
Yes. Yeah. One day, Michael and I will release our intense, depressing minor key version. I want that
as an EP
of Father Abraham to the world, but not today. Not today.
Yeah. So in so doing, God set apart his descendants as well. So God also accepted the other patriarchs, Isaac and Jacob, in spite of their failing. So this means that God must accept the rest of the lump, the nation of Israel. Again, we're talking about the nation. We talked about this before. We're not talking about individuals. We're talking about the collective, the nation of Israel. Paul then uses the metaphor of an olive tree to describe the relationship between the Jews and the Gentiles. So this is a different thing altogether. So this is the relationship between the Jews and the Gentiles. The Jews are the natural branches of the tree, but they have been broken off because of their unbelief. So those who did not believe have been broken off of that tree. And then we, the Gentiles, those who are non-Jewish,
Cassius over in the corner.
Cassius over there in the corner, covering his eyes.
Todd up front.
Yep, Todd up front.
Pretty sure Todd was not a Jewish Christian.
Come on, Todd. So the Gentiles, we have been grafted in. So those of you who know how to do that, congratulations. Now you get it, right? We have been grafted in. So Paul then warns us Gentiles in verse 22, talking to Todd and Cassius over there in the corner again, not to be arrogant. Don't be arrogant. We have to remember, and we have to be very thankful about this, that we are only there because of God's grace. We're only grafted in because of God's grace. He then ends this part by saying this about his fellow Israelites. Even they do not remain in, if they do not remain in unbelief, will be grafted in because God has the power to graft them in again. So God has the power to bring the people of Israel back, which is awesome, right? Yes. So here's your summary for this episode. Number 1, be humble and grateful for our position as part of the olive tree. Don't be boastful about it. Don't thumb your noses at Malachi in the other corner, because we're only part of it because because of God's grace. We have been adopted into God's family. So this is a warning for us. We should be careful to keep on persevering in our faith. If God is severe / just enough to punish the natural son who turned from him, then he is severe / just enough to punish the adopted son who turns from him too.
Yeah, that, like you mentioned verse 22, and I'm just going to read it quick.
Yeah, go.
Consider therefore the kindness and sternness of God, sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you also will be cut off.
Yep.
And that's a stern warning, like you're saying, of
right.
Like, and again, it's if he punished those that had always been, a part of his family, like, well, like you're not gonna be able to avoid that punishment either if you're not following him.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
God
it's a
is
good
fair.
It's an important warning.
Yep. God is fair and God is just. So we are treated the same way. There's no favoritism here.
Yep.
The people of Israel are not his favorites. Us Gentiles, just because we accepted Jesus and we responded more positively than the people of Israel, does not mean that we are now his favorites.
Yep.
There are no favorites here. Both will be forgiven if they are faithful, and both will be cast off if they rebel against God. So God is just so awesome. He's just fair to everyone, right? So
no head, heart, and why can't I think of the other one? Hand holding. That's not it.
Life change.
Life change. It's like he's a pastor. It has to start with H, but it doesn't start with H. Because we'll save that for the end of Romans 11, which will be next week. But you've got some questions for us.
Yep. Here's your questions for this week. Number 1.
We need like a questions jingle.
Oh, yeah.
Not for our new show. Michael, could you come up with a questions jingle? Leo and I are going to pause for 5 seconds. We need a 5-second jingle about Leo's question time. All right, are you ready, Leo?
Ready?
That was really good, Michael. Thank you.
Okay.
Either a really fun jingle was in there, or you just listened to 5 seconds of silence.
Awkward silence.
Yeah. But Leo, can we hear the questions now?
All right, so here are your questions. How do you react? This is your first one. How do you react to the idea that God can use something negative to accomplish good for us? So Genesis, look at Genesis chapter 50 and verse 20, if you want more reference on that. But how do you react to the idea that God can use something bad to accomplish something good for us? Second question is, have you ever felt better than others because, quote unquote, you're Christian? How do we fight against the tendency we have toward pride? And for the PH people, just a couple Sundays ago, we talked about pride. So
you better have some good answers.
Yeah, you better have some good answers, people.
Or you didn't preach very well.
Right?
That's also possible, Leo. That's one of the two.
I'll be on you guys. Just keep in mind. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so here's the third one. In what ways does it encourage you to know that God can and will bring us back from our unbelief if we're willing?
Yeah.
And then
very encouraging. And then
next step
is continuing to read Romans 11. We're going to finish it up. So 25 through 36.
Yes.
And then we're getting closer and closer to the end of Romans.
Again, if you prefer a book that you want us to go through, we'll consider it. Is what we're going to do.
A book of the Bible.
A book of the Bible.
We will not consider books not in the Bible, as we discussed at the beginning. Yes. But yes, we have not picked the next one yet. So let us know If you, excuse me, if you joined us for episode 126 of the Grow podcast, which is the first one with Pastor Mark that we talked about.
Right.
I really, once again, asked him, as I asked Pastor Mike, and I believe I've asked you, if you would preach on Ehud, my favorite Old Testament character, the judge who was an assassin who stabbed the fat king, who was so fat that his fat like swallowed the sword, and they couldn't figure out that he had been. It's like my favorite Bible story. Not actually, but it's so weird that it's in there, and I've never heard a pastor preach on it. So maybe we'll go back to Judges.
Hey, why not?
Maybe we'll do a deep dive in Judges. If you want the story of Ehud on the show with no name, that's where I need you
type
to vote.
in Judges, the book of Judges, and we'll consider
Judges would be an interesting one.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, you can vote for Old Testament. You can vote
Talk
for
about
New Testament.
dark though.
Yeah, well, but also the most important thing to keep in mind is that your vote doesn't matter, and we're going to pick whatever we want. No, I'm just kidding. No, we really do. If there's if there's a consensus, that will probably weigh us one way or the other. So let us know what you'd like us to go through next, but then continue.
And why.
Ooh, interesting.
And why?
Yeah. So like if you say Judges,
right?
Because
you want Ehud on there. Then
exactly. But yeah, come back next time. Make sure we're jumping in the comments again. I know that for those of you who listen to the audio format, you've had to find us in a new place now. So make sure you subscribe. If you found us and you're listening and you're like, did I click subscribe before? Just go check it again right now.
Yep.
We won't pause again for you because that's weird. But you have time. Go subscribe so that you get notified when the new episodes go live. On YouTube, it's still on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/New Hope Here. It's in its own playlist now. So, and then for those of you who might be joining us new, or there's some of our Roman study that you've missed. Eventually, I'm hoping to get those added back in to the playlist, the Grow podcast ones. But as of right now, to go find those, you'll need to go to the Grow podcast playlist. I'm sorry. It's a time consuming thing that hasn't happened yet. But I promise that I will try to do that. I can definitely promise to try. I think I've said all of those things. Pastor Leo, thanks for being here for the first ever episode of the show with no name.
Glad to be here.
Do you think the jingle that may or may not exist will play again on the way out?
Oh, it'd be great.
Yeah. All right. So as I start ramping up the ending here, you're going to hear the music coming in. But as I say every single time on all of these podcasts, and I truly, truly mean it, we love you, New Hope family. And we're so thankful to go through this study with you. I've been learning a lot. I know you have as well. We're thankful for your teaching, Pastor Leo. Jump in the comments. Let's grow together. We grow best in community. And then we will see you next time.
Ingat.